This is another message from the underground. The voice of Free Earth, brought to you by Paul Seils, straight from the source. You are here now with a special purpose to fulfill. And you are not alone. This is it, family. It's up to us. One planet, one spiritual source, in a multitude of forms. Stay human. Protect the planet. Raise the consciousness.
Guys, Paul Seils, thank you for joining us for another message from the underground. It's going to be our last one for the year. And today again for episode number 3 of Actualising Independence, Jason Reynolds. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here. About to, can't believe it's the end of the year, but I imagine that's going to be said a lot of times over the next couple of days. It's been an amazing set of days, hey?
Yeah, it's been an amazing year on many levels. So we're up to episode 3. We're going to be talking about actualising independence in our relationships, the Christmas cheer. That's going to be a very interesting conversation. And I know that a lot of people have been sending a lot of feedback through Jason as well, and just saying that they've been very appreciative of the conversations that we've been having, unlike any other conversations that people seem to be having around this narrative at this point in time. So thank you to your contribution. We've been getting a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback from people that have been very appreciative. And we're only session 3 into, I think, a 10-session series. So thank you for everything that you're contributing.
Thanks very much, Paul. It's been a pleasure. It's I think for me, it probably goes a bit to independence. It's stepping out of the way in which we've always done things. And I think, people are like a moth to the flame, have been taken to, as much as they've avoided news services and media and mainstream media, and, people are leaving that sort of space in droves. They still assimilate or come together in another form of media or another form of opinion or information giving, rather than looking to develop something new. And I think it's a very common thing from the schoolyard and beyond, that where we fall into this habit of blaming other people, and it's this false sense of happiness that, and even as a kid in those groups that we had where they would just backstab people, and we're all part of it in some way. We're all avoiding not being the one that was being focused upon, but, and sometimes not wanting to be left out. And a lot of the times, I see, especially over this year, is a lot of people have gone away from standard forms of news service into other forms of opinion-based news service, which are no different. They might be more righteous. They might be more aligned with that particular individual, but they're no different in the individual's capacity to grow and to expand and be able to, really find their own truth. And that's, that's what I'm, hoping to share a lot about it, is that independence and the ability of the individual to be able to embrace their own difference.
Yeah. And embrace their own difference. And the thing is as well, like we're heading towards, and interesting, the subject matter and the topic of this conversation today, actualising independence in our relationships, the Christmas cheer. And also because of the fact that, it's not, for some people, it's not necessarily a joyous time. They're getting together with family. They've had a difficult year. They're finding members of the family particularly sort of challenging sometimes, or triggering. Sometimes people have a little bit too much eggnog, and sort of say what they think. And unfortunately, sometimes it might come out the wrong way. And so I know it's going to be an interesting time for some people. People have different opinions about what's going on, knowing when to say something, knowing when to shut up. Just being discerning about that. So I know it's going to be an interesting, and it can be a very activating and triggering people for a lot of time this time of year.
But there's a whole different range and layers of truth. I think it's important to step in here, is that there's a saying that goes that if you continue to tell the truth, you don't need to remember what you've said. And, I believe that's not just about being honest. That's also about being able to say what it is that's true to you. And, we've discussed this before, but what we lack is not bravery or courage to say what we believe is true. What we lack is the ability to be graceful in dealing with the responses that may come. And that's the challenge. That's the issue that we're all going to have as we move through this, is, our ability to be able to say what we want. And that's a lot of what I want to go into today, is the ability to be able to deal with the unknown, the resilience to be able to step into a place that we haven't been before. And, this is the very nature of fear. fear is just our inability to be able to be at ease and act authentically in a space that is unknown to us, you know, and that might be jumping in a tank with a shark. We're not actually scared of the shark. We're scared of what the shark might do. The shark itself, to observe from a distance, we're not scared of it. But what the fear that it brings through us is what we think about the unknown, the place where we don't believe we can be in control in that particular space. And we might fight against the shark, we might call it names, we might talk about it in great amounts of fear, but the shark isn't actually doing anything. It's our projection, our relationship with it that makes it a challenge. And this is, I noticed one of the questions or comments that's come up just in the chat there about how to deal with certain factions of people. And, you know, there's a lot of political correctness that exists, and it is becoming rampant.
Yeah.
No one likes it. You know, a very small percentage of people buy into it. But it becomes popularized and controlling, and to piss people off and to frustrate them, to create an audience away from their own creativity themselves. Now, these particular notions that people may believe to be true and their ability to express that, let them express it. But the thing is, within our own self, it only becomes an issue when we give it an audience. It only becomes an issue when we allow it to become a part of our own life. And we become a part of our own life, and we buy into it, and we provide it with an audience. And it's the same for many things, but you know, the solution to all these things moving forward, what we've got to move past is waiting for the news to come in, waiting for someone else's opinion to tell us what to do. What we need to look to is first recognizing and accepting the responsibility of what's created, the relationships that we have with life, with people, with an environment, with a race of people. You know, we've got to take responsibility ourselves, and when we can be responsible for that, then we own it, and then we do not become dictated to on how we're supposed to live by others. You know, there's a, to me, I mean, I used to get very triggered at times by, you know, the nature of political correctness and the way people want to be called, how they want it to be addressed, notions of, you know, use of words like white privilege.
Yeah.
They're all irrelevant. They only become relevant when we start to engage with them.
Well, that'll be a bit triggering for some people that are involved and sort of swept up in things like the Black Lives Matter movement, Jason.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. But I think, Paul, that it's to understand, you know, it's one of the great things within this at the moment. There's a lot of people that consider themselves to be awakened, enlightened, or at least on a journey to a greater seeking of truth. But the challenge is for most of us is to not then need to throw out, you know, guide ropes and lines to others in order for them to grab onto to move forward with them. That the greatest way to be able to liberate others is in the example we provide and the gap with the space we provide beyond us that we've liberated. It allows people to move comfortably into that, to build their confidence, to build their certainty in the path that you're taking until they find that within themselves and their own self-belief in the way they want to express themselves before they start to create a path that others can follow to such a period of time that they can then move forward and create their own vibrance, their own individual weave through the fabric of life. And that's, you know, part of the challenge is those people that have come to an awareness or a leadership in their own life, they've stopped looking for others to come and join them, rather than recognizing people will come and join them on this particular crusade, on this particular direction that they're heading, when the space is provided, when they are inspired to do so. So, you know, that's a big part, I suppose, for us to go into, is to look at how many of us are waiting for other people to awaken and therefore stagnating our own journey and our own expression. Because once we awaken, once we let ourselves go from what it is that we've been tied into, that we've been subscribed to for such a long period of time, we now recognize, as much as we've been complaining about those in control, we now are to assume that authority within our own self. And that requires us to make a choice to move forward. Now we are the creator. And this is what the most significant thing that all of us avoid is, what do we want to create? We've got all the resources now, I've got all the space, I've freed myself. What is it that I am here to create? What will I create? Will it be accepted? Will it be received? Will I be judged in the same way that I have judged others? Because that becomes the fear and the example that I provided to life, because I've done that previously. So for me to actually step out and expose myself, that is the challenge that we all have, embracing our own significance. And
sorry, Jason, can you say a little bit more about that? When you say expose yourself, I mean, like, can you say a bit more about that? What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, it may go to levels of...
Not literally, I hope.
Yeah, no, not literally. I mean, but whatever floats your boat. I mean, if that works for you, enjoy that. There's places for that, as there is in everything in life. But exposure is about, for many of us, bringing forward that part of us that is unique, that is not within anyone else. An idea it may start with that may be, a spark of brilliance that we want to bring to the world that no one else has seen, yet let alone understands. And for many of us, that calibration that is required within us as we have an idea that we choose to bring forward and expose, it's going to be met with opposition. People are going to look at you as, well, who are you to do this? What do you know about it? What sort of expertise do you have? So we have to go through those particular parts, which steels our own resolve to answer those questions rather than take those questions as offensive, as judgmental, but as an opportunity to be mentored by those people around us that know us most, that say, well, who are you to do this? They're the questions you can ask yourself, because until we can answer those questions, we're not going to pursue that creation that we're after in the first place. It just becomes a fantasy and an idea. So when we start to expose ourselves, we receive in equal amount something called judgment. And that judgment, if we understand it, rather than expecting to be embraced and loved because this new idea that's different, that's going to cause people to change their life, to be embraced, which most likely it won't, we've got to recognize that that's not part of the process. Part of our process for growth here is to expose ourselves. And that's what we're called to. That's what we're here to express. Every single part and fiber of our being is here to express ourselves uniquely and authentically. Part of our role and responsibility is to understand how and why we look, feel, and have been created in this particular way to be able to do that. And once we can align in that way, things become much more at ease rather than in opposition. So most of us, when we start to judge others, it's because we're in opposition with ourselves, not with them. They just happen to be the most easy target because we're guided towards them in the opposition that they provide to our current ideals or insights. And it's to recognize that when I want to go against that particular person who believes in this way of living, that for me as an individual, do I buy into that? Or do I continue to create something beyond these loud voices, these disconcerted, maybe people that are releasing their own toxicity? And we can look at those things that oppose us at the moment, that when we create growth and we stimulate growth in others, and we resolve ourselves to start exposing more of what we are going to trigger people. And to understand what we are creating is liberation and healing in others when we do so. It's not our role or our responsibility to do that, but the dynamics of life allow it. Then when we are serving ourselves, we are also serving everyone else. So when we come to a true state of authenticity, we don't need to worry about how it's going to be received. We just need to recognize that when we can maintain a state of life that's in our highest good, that is in alignment with our own expression, it will allow others to find that within themselves. But sometimes that's going to create a great level of triggering, which causes people to, at times, clumsy and angrily spew out, some vitriol. The thing is for us to realize is, hey, wait, that's not what that person's usually all about. That's not a normal behavior. What I am doing here is facilitating and holding space, because it's not for me to fix them. It's not for me to respond to that.
Yeah.
It's for me just to recognize, wow, geez, how would I like to be received in that moment when I just let go and just think, fuck the world, that's the way it's going to be. Well, how do I want to be received in that area? Because I know that's not my normal approach to life. That is not what I'm about. But when we can start to see that people have such a limited capacity to be able to let go and release, we have, this ability to expose ourselves gives us that opportunity. For many of us, because we don't feel comfortable, we don't feel certain in exposing ourselves. And look, we'll go back to the consistently, the greatest fear that people have when it's, surveys are done, is speaking publicly. I mean, this says everything about the very nature of our society. The judgment that's there, the judgment that we've placed upon others, that the laughs that we have behind other people's backs when they are actually trying to push forward themselves, the names that we assimilate to people, from bogans to different types of races to, different sexualities, the names that we give to that in order to separate ourselves, in order to elevate what we believe, elevating ourselves above other people.
Yes.
I mean, the very nature of identifying someone as black is where the racism begins. You don't, this is creating race is the very basis of racism.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, Jason, because I think I've been sharing with someone, and I got to have a conversation last week with an Australian First Nation elder that's in Western Australia, and having the conversation. And I shared with him that I grew up, my first couple of years of my life, I grew up in the Northern Territory in Australia as one of the only white children in that community. And at that point in time, I had no concept of skin color whatsoever. It didn't enter my consciousness whatsoever. Probably, maybe until I'd sort of later, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 or something or other. But the ages of 3 and 4, I had no concept of skin color, of differentiation, of separation whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look, there's a lot of psychological warfare that goes on, and a lot of it makes sense with the narrative that we're brought up with. We are born independent. As a child, we might not be running around driving cars, and we might not be making decisions that are going to sweep and change the world. But as individuals, our concern and focus is our own self. When we want something, we don't wait for manners. We scream, we demand attention, and we get what we need in order for us to independently serve ourselves. Yes, there is a dependency in our own life and the way in which we're raised in this society, but we are independent. We are taught to become a part of a community, but the very nature of why we exist is because we're different. But we spend so much time trying to conform and be the same way into a particular class, into a particular stream, into a particular narrative that we identify ourselves with that is not about our own individuality. And as we start to do that and become grouped, we then group others around us, and then we start to create opposition because we start to have this romance with what we believe we are in order of a way to elevate our own self. And I completely agree with what you're saying. Kids don't see that. They are taught that.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to take, as I was saying before, responsibility within our own self for the experiences that we have.
Yeah.
For the way in which we see things. Even if we were a child, when we conscribe these things, when we were indoctrinated with them, it's only us that can change that. So we're not taking responsibility because we're at fault and we made mistakes as an individual, as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. That's not what responsibility is. Responsibility is the choice that I am taking to embody the ability to change. And too often responsibility, which is one of the greatest liberations, has been hijacked by this idea of blame or doing wrong. Responsibility is when I choose to respond to the ability that I inherently have. It's not my ability to respond. It's the response I have to the entire ability that exists within me. My role in life is to find out what that ability is and why it is so unique and why it's so different and why I do not want to become like everyone else. Because it's in that particular space as we go through relationships. Many of us, live our life in relationships at times because we're hurt, we're wounded, after the first time we've had our heart broken. But when we go into the very first relationship we have, we just want to share. This is fun, this is exciting. The first touch, the first kiss, the feel of it, like what we're doing, we just want to talk for hours about who we are. We want to hold hands, that feels amazing. And, there's all of these great experiences that we have that, we're invincible. And you see it, a teenager, and talking about their love, and it's like they've just found the world. Yeah. It's when they become ill-prepared and recognizing that they cannot do that for themselves, that a child is not being guided, that is not being raised to a point early in those 7 to 8 to 9, 10 years of life to recognize that they can fulfill themselves. And I don't mean by things like meditation, these things can help. But it's as an individual and how they make decisions and the fact that they're going to make mistakes, but recognizing how we have, a role as parents for children in the next generation for those first 13 or 14 years on how to get them to the point where they can make decisions. This is the capacity that we all have, because the challenge that we're facing at the moment, in this world and far beyond this situation and this year, is all about an individual's ability to make decisions from a state of truth and being able to discern the information to get there. If we could all make decisions, we would not be manipulated. If we could all make decisions, there would not be people in control that are making more decisions for us in our own life than what we need to be. Our capacity to make decisions is all about our relationship with ourselves. And too often, we find ourselves falling into situations where we want other people to make decisions for us, where we have chosen not to. So, if we want to go into, I suppose that we're jumping around and there's quite
I was just going to ask you
depth that we can go into.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And if we can go into that, can I just go back to the first part of the conversation where we're talking about sort of coming up towards the end of the
Right.
year and sort of getting activated and that sort of thing. I've sort of been accused by some friends at different point in time of being different stages in the spectrum from being like completely overly sensitive and maybe not saying anything at all at the expense of my own suppression, to like swinging to the other end of the spectrum of like just like maybe occurring as being insensitive and just sort of saying it or whatever you feel like. I don't even worry about expressing my opinion anymore, Jason, unless people really want to ask me. I don't enter any debates. I don't have to defend anything unless someone asks me the question about what my opinion is. And I'm like, do you really want to know what my opinion is? And to a certain degree, that's me asking for approval for them. But yeah, sometimes on the far end of the spectrum about maybe being insensitive, and it's like, this is what I feel, this is what I think, this is my position on it, and like if you got a reaction to that, just deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And so you're saying is in the questionnaire is like how we actually express that in a way that's
having the freedom to be able to express that with some liberation and some sense of without sort of walking on eggshells around people, or being conscious of sort of what you're saying and how you're saying it and how it lands and whether it's received or whether you have permission to I know fundamentally in things like Buddhism and that sort of thing, on a mild level, people will sort of say that giving your opinion without approval is like a mild form of violence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fundamentally. Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. So having that sense of liberation with people to be able to express freely without sort of consideration, without limitation, but also being responsible for that.
Absolutely. I think one of the first things to understand, as we were talking before, it's about understanding our own selves and our own difference. But one thing that's common to all of us is we are here to express ourselves. The very nature of energy itself at its most basic level, and going down to frequencies and molecular, the most minuscule structure exists to express itself. Yeah. Every single thing exists to express itself and express itself uniquely. If not, it is moving towards death. It becomes obsolete. So we need to recognize in our own form that we have to allow for, as a priority in our life, a form of expression. You see, we become triggered by people and we start to create names and opposition and becoming offended by others who have expression in their own life and choose to do so because we don't. Now, to me, expression, whether that is as an individual, and the most simple things and the most powerful things in life are free. I charge a lot of money to sit with people and go through it at a mentoring level, and people say it's expensive. It is expensive but the thing is, the solution is you can do it yourself, and it's very easy and it's very simple, and it's a matter of being able to do that. But for many of us, we get hit by so many things around us that we find it difficult to navigate. The most simple thing that we can all do is sit with the people that we love in our most tight, close circle, our partner, our kids, and at least once a week have an open space of expression. Yeah. Where we express our truth, not filtered, not restricted, not limited. If you find that difficult to do with children at a younger age, we'll do it with another adult to begin with. But eventually you'll find that what you're holding back from children, they are more aware of than what you believe to be anyway. That the fact that you believe you have conversations behind closed doors, the children know that, and they still work at a sensory level that we've mostly as adults discarded and we've forgotten about.
So what you're saying about talking about is doing that on a preventive maintenance, rather than sort of a lot of people hang on to things until they get to a point of, suppression and where the communication explodes, and then people end up saying things that they don't necessarily mean.
Absolutely. It's absolute alignment, within your own self to be able to, it's not preventative. It's conscious. It's being aware that there's nothing wise about it. This is just obvious. I exist because I want to express myself. When I don't express myself, I become frustrated and pissed off, and I hold it inside me till it becomes angry, and then I let it out in anger, and then I start to get this reputation of being an angry, cantankerous old person. And then what happens is people start to see me in that way because I'm not allowing myself to do so at a state of ease or grace to express what is unique through me. So we can complain as much as we like about what other people are doing or not doing and get angry and find more people that are angry with us to go about and justify violence. But the thing is, it's not going to change anything except the fact your social circle will start to reflect some pretty unstable people in your life, which will then make you even more frustrated. So the thing is, you know, some people have to go through a nervous breakdown before they recognize this and to allow themselves to let go. Some people have to go through terminal illness before they do this. But the whole point in our own life, our liberation comes when we choose to make decisions when we don't have to, but when we choose to, when we've got space. You know, this whole moment where we're moving through at the moment, to me, is about the end of time.
Yeah.
Not the end of times, but the end of time. We are moving into the navigation of space. And I don't mean some fantastical idea about some fake Hubble telescope flying around the sky that can't send us back an image of our own Earth. I mean about space as it exists around us, about how we manage the relationship that I have with an individual, about how when I create space in my life, that I don't feel guilty in having that I feel I need to give that away to others because they are at this particular point in life not feeling so great, that I need to give away what I've cultivated, what I've worked through, what I've ground through, what I've looked at. You know, this guilt and shame that we have in order, this is what we're moving into, our navigation of space. So when we go back to what we're looking at here, our particular capacity to sit and speak and hold space, focus on that individual in what they're saying, let them speak, do not take it personally. Even when they're saying, the thing that I find and makes me feel really, you know, withdrawn and frustrated and angry is the way in which you do this. When you're sharing openly with family, you know, to be able to sit there and let them express that means that they don't have to hold on to it, means it doesn't become an issue and you can observe it, both release it and move forward. You know, people's freedom comes in their ability to express themselves. This is not about running up a hill with a flag to claim some land. Freedom is all about expression. It's never been any different. That when we become restricted in the way that we're asked to express ourselves, that's when we don't have freedom. So the relationships that we've created with people around us to make decisions for us, which means those silent decisions, and I'm not going to say anything because I don't believe that they're going to receive it and I don't know if I can deal with that. That is the stuff that you need to deal with. It's not that that person is challenging or has a different opinion or is not receiving of you. It's your inability to be able to speak with grace in receiving the outcome of their response. Because if you can allow them to go, that is ridiculous, crazy. Listen to this guy over here. He's a Trump supporter. Come over here and, you know, to start to deal with these sort of polarizing type issues. Yeah. It's these types of individuals that allow us to find that within our own self to be able to better our expression. But look, one of the most simple things is in developing relationships with people to a really deep level, sit there openly, speak without knowing what's coming next until you feel complete, and then allow yourself to embrace the other person, look them in the eyes, direct your body language towards them. Listen to what they are saying. Don't hear it, listen. Don't take it on. You're allowing that person to purge. And that particular practice in itself would solve so many issues, because what would happen at that particular point when an individual learns that they can express themselves and they get past all the gunk and all the plaque that they have in their life that they hold on to, the stuff that has become toxic because it's become stagnant, like a pond. The water in there is life-giving, but you stagnate that, it becomes poisonous. And the same thing that we hold on to in our own life, those things that we choose to regress, the things that we retreat from, the things we hold on to, that becomes our poison. And then our poison becomes our expression. So the thing is, as an individual, when we learn to express with those people around us in a deep, open, and ultimately a very loving way, sometimes it's inconvenient. But when we allow ourselves to do that, we start to find a level of self-belief. We start to find a rhythm, our rhythm. And we start to feel that, wait a second, all of these things that I've said that I've been holding on to, I'm still received, I'm still loved in the presence of those around me. But there's something here for me. And I start to explore that further. And what starts to happen is, because I'm not repressed, we then don't have people that are so opposing, so vile to you, that are leading a country or an organization or a community. Because you're not silent, because you've found your voice and you're allowing that to happen in the seed of your own environment. When you do that, this is where you create liberation. Your change is not about being accepted by others. Your change is about you embracing yourself, especially as others call you a freak, especially as others call you, words worse than this and things intended to offend you. Your ability to not receive that offense allows them to sit with it themselves.
Yeah.
We're all aware of that, but it's recognizing in our own self the simplicity that there's not some magical book that we need to read. There's not some mystery. It is the simplicity of expression. Our relationships, for many of us, are our greatest place of learning. And we see this all the time. We've been conscribed into these religious-based ideas on what a relationship is and what sanctifies a relationship for the longer term. Ideas of marriage.
Yeah.
These particular things, there's been many ways in which these have been done through life, but certain ones have become popularized because they fit into a legal fiction. And for many of us, we don't know how to change that, and we become offended when it doesn't work. There's many societies around the world that when it comes to relationships, that they need to justify within their own selves and express deeply and openly why it is to continue the relationship after each year and to recommit. Because at that particular point, if they can't, they're not doing a justice to themselves and to the other. They need to be open and honest. But if we, again, allow ourselves to express ourselves openly, we're not clumsy. We're not ill-gotten in the way in which we speak. We learn to do that from a space of truth because it's practice, because it is essential to all of us. It's not a maybe. Whatever we don't express and whatever we repress, this becomes our disease. There is no, I was sitting here in front of any scientist to prove to me that any disease that anyone is dying for in this world, from a virus to any other part, is not based upon someone's inability to express themselves authentically. There is no other diagnosis that is required. And I've seen this and I've observed it 100% of the time that when people start to do this, they overcome every single condition that has been laid or placed upon them. For many of us, though, to go through that process, to remove all that stagnant and toxic stuff that we've been carrying, the hurts, the pains, what we were not given attention about as a child, all of these particular issues as an individual.
Yeah.
So I'll just finish this.
Yes.
All those things that we hold on to, that for some people is very difficult to go through, because in order to start to liberate that and let it go, the gunk really comes out. It's the same as when we do a fast of any particular part of purging. What we actually experience is the most toxic stuff comes out for release first. It's the stuff at the surface that has been, and it's most urgent and most important, prioritized to release because it's most poisonous.
Yeah.
And for many of us, when we go into this new embrace of life and we start to find pain and sickness that comes with it, it's like, well, this is not the way to go. I need joy, I need light, I need happiness. Those joy and light and happiness, they are the result of liberating the darkness.
Yeah.
That we don't go after joy, light, and happiness. We become joy, light, and happiness, and it becomes a consistent habit if we want it to be, rather than a point of relief or a temporary experience. If we are focused upon, in our own time, liberating our darkness, and our darkness is just going into areas we have not been. It's liberating the unknown. It's, rather than being dictated to, it's becoming aware and understanding and discovering. So as individuals, that is our responsibility. No one's done anything to us. It's what we have not allowed for our own self. Our ability to, like people want to play sport or they want to go shopping, it's expression is as essential. And when we learn to do that, we become liberated. It is, to me, the greatest thing, I suppose, of what I intend to bring into this particular space of life.
Yeah.
The ability for people to learn to express themselves, because then there's no longer any attention upon what people are doing wrong, what they could be doing better, because we are liberated in our own self by own expression to create that ourselves.
Yeah. I guess that's a beautiful thing, Jason, and thank you for doing that. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. I've been involved in the personal development and coaching space pretty rigorously and in depth in the last 5 years, and it never ceases to amaze me. I'm very fortunate that people sort of trust me impeccably and that they feel free to be able to tell me anything, really, and just experience what I've experienced with people in personal development and releasing and that sort of thing. What so many people are carrying with them as far as trauma is concerned, or guilt and all the shame that goes with them identifying with that, and what they're carrying with that for themselves. And there's this sort of cultural agreement about people not airing their dirty laundry, and don't say that, and I'm embarrassed myself or the family or that sort of thing. And I think this is why we're having this conversation as well, because I remember the quote, and I can't remember it specifically, that the only hope for humanity is the transformation of the individual. And that's why I'm super excited about having these conversations. And I'm also grateful as well that I have a lot of friends that I have the ability to, they mightn't necessarily agree or understand what I'm saying particularly, and I'm really staying and making a conscious decision to stay on the conversation for solutions and what's possible. At this point in time, we all know what the issues and what the problems are, but I'm just very grateful that I've got a lot of friends that mightn't understand, but they'll sit down and have a conversation with me and just say, look, can you tell me about this? Like, what is this? I don't understand that, rather than them just having a fixed position and then wanting to defend it, or either of us having a fixed position and then wanting to defend it, just to get in a conversation and then genuinely inquiring into the conversation, and why do you think this about this, and why is this about this, and what's your knowledge of that?
That's look, to me, you can bring someone to tears by asking them a question. For them to be recognized with your intention to understand them. I've seen that happen in a number of relationships where people are so used to being right or providing an answer, or continue to try to prove themselves within a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's the same with business, whether it is with intimacy and whether it is with parenting, and any other relationships that exist. But the ability to be able to ask a question, especially into a place where someone is completely, and it's obvious, opposes you and is different to you, but to be able to ask them, why is it that you do that? Look, I'd love to understand why you believe it to be that way. Why do you do things like that? Because what it allows is for a point of that person's attention is now being received, and you're now asking for more of their attention, which is the greatest thing that look, at a deeper level, beyond all the verbiage that goes around it and the interesting words that people like to use, attention is the very force of life. Everything exists because of attention. We just don't recognize the significance that we have in how we provide it. Everything that lives around you only exists because of the attention you provide it. Yeah. But for many, that simple concept to be able to accept without, a palaver of philosophy that goes with it, this is the simplicity that we all need to be exposed to, I believe, but is the ability to ask a question requires me to be able to become present to and understand something that I did not previously know. It's a very easy gauge in life and your own relationships with others is to how often you do ask questions of that individual, rather than when they have an opinion, you come back with another answer. And when you have people that are just providing answers to each other, like a tennis match,
or
that is not a relationship. That is not a space for that. But true liberation, wisdom is gained in an individual's ability to be able to structure a question, to be able to listen to the outcome of that question, to then ask another one. You can find how much people are into you and how much they appreciate you by the questions they ask of you.
Yeah.
That they're your friends, that they might not be the group of people that you know the most, but these are the people that genuinely are intrigued about what it is that you are and are there wanting to bring that out. And for many of us, it's a challenging thing to leave behind people based on time. We've got to let that go. The fact I've known this person for 20 years, it is irrelevant. The same as in a particular relationship, no matter how we want to look at this, an intimate relationship is very healthy based upon those two individuals choosing to grow. Yeah. Relationships are all about growth. If we are not growing with the other person and we choose to suppress our own self because someone doesn't want to move in that direction, or they don't want to confront a part of their own life, which we have or chosen to, we either come back to a state of suppressing ourselves, which is only going to create resentment and toxicity within that relationship, rather than liberating ourselves to continue to move forward. We are not owned by, we are not expectant of those people that we enter into contracts with. We have the ability to enter and to relieve ourselves of that. And it's very important that, the lack of a healthy relationship in life is our inability to be able to leave it. Yeah, if we go into a relationship that we don't believe we can leave, or we don't know how to, we're fearful of, we're not in a relationship, we're imprisoned. And to me, one of the most healthy things that we can do in any relationship is to become very present and discerning in our own spaces to, is this relationship for me? And I don't mean in a place of questioning it, I mean in a place of health, in a place of recognizing what I'm providing to it, how it's allowing me to grow, what I'm contributing. Am I doing, the best I can by myself, which is also by those around me? What is the example I'm providing here? These are not questions you ask in every minute of the day, because life's to be enjoyed. But there's times there to have a structured time that I would say to be able to give yourself that attention and reflect upon how you do feel about the way in which you're living and what you're here to create. That's questions. I think when you sit and actually ask a child a question, watch them come alive.
Yeah.
Watch them want to just, oh, well, you want to know what I've got to say. You want to understand from me. And watch a partner come alive when you actually stop and ask them, and not just, hey, what are you doing? But to sit down and, can you explain to me? I really want to know how all that works. And often at times when it's a difference of, to what's been usually the behavior, you might get resistance at first, but to be able to move through that and recognize and take responsibility, you haven't asked questions before, but there is that resistance. But then to ask deeper into it, that is every wisdom of life that we have within us is only there and opened up for our own exposing by asking questions of ourselves. Questions are the most profound and powerful tool that we have. But it's our ability and our boldness and our courage to be able to listen to them in order to act upon them. For us, talking about relationships, the relationship we have with ourselves is very much based upon something called trust. And for me, trust is about the preparedness to act before we understand the expression. So when we're asking a question of ourselves and we're already choosing to act upon what we receive from within us, or if we trust another individual, is before we actually ask and hear the answer that they have to provide us, we're already prepared to act upon it. That is what trust is. And the thing is, when we open ourselves up and have a heart to be able to deal with that, it's not about that we are now falling under their favor. What it is that we recognize within ourselves, even if it does go sour, we are able to be independent enough to be able to navigate ourselves back to our own home, back to our own truth. And our ability to trust someone is the ability to act upon. And that is what, what's critical within each of us, to be able to have that discernment within our own self, is when we ask ourselves a question and we are blessed enough, if we cultivate a connection with our own self and have our own counsel, that when we can ask a question of ourselves, that we're already prepared to act before we hear the information. And one thing that's very important here, when we may be going a bit deeper here, is the information that we receive from ourselves when we ask a question is directly determined by our willingness to act upon it before we ask it. So if we're willing to act upon it before we ask the question, the information we receive will come to someone who's ready to act. But if we are choosing to wait to act before we receive the information, most of us will receive information that we're not prepared to act upon, because that's the space we're holding. So you mentioned before about release, and there was one thing I really wanted to share. Because I think it's release is a really important aspect of our own life, and I think it's something that we do in each and every moment. That it is to let go and give space for growth, and then allow ourselves to reconnect. For many of us, we still see our children as they were when they were a child, and we still treat them as a child. We'll still see our partner as a way that they were when we first met them. We still see people that we knew back in those times. What we're doing at that particular point is we're not allowing for release, because there's times when we have a relationship with someone that's not currently healthy. Our ability to release and let go of what was, to be able to see them as they are right now, is not only liberating them, but it's allowing ourselves to recognize our own growth. When we don't allow ourselves to see how someone's changed, and we keep holding them account for what they did to us years ago, we are still living in that same spot ourselves. We're not recognizing our own growth that we have moved through, because that person, I'm never going to forgive them. What they did for me. And this is a time of year, Christmas, where some people don't see their uncles, their aunties, their friends, their family, because of probably most likely something they still can't even explain. It's something that's just dissolved in such a way, in anger in some point, which I still don't remember what caused it.
It's interesting because I have conversations with some people as well, and I realize, they're still hanging on to a memory of me from like years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm not that person anymore. You know what I mean? I'm continually doing the work. I'm continually having different experiences. I'm continually shifting my context about different things. And it's interesting to have an interaction with someone that you haven't seen for a long time, and they still hold you in that place that you were maybe if they haven't seen you for like maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago or whatever. It's an interesting experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite obvious, those particular experiences. And that's where it's challenging at times they're the times where constructing a question is most important. And to be, abrupt and upfront, because ultimately you release that, not just from you, but from them when you feel that. To have the courage to say what's been unsaid is, I notice, and this is what I feel, there's something there that you still see me possibly in that particular way, maybe going soft to begin with to actually lubricate the conversation, because it's something that hasn't been spoken about. It's a bit rusty, that relationship, and you need to be able to, bring the trust back into it. But, it's very important, I believe, to ask questions, but that's about your own ability of choice. Do you want to change that? Do you want to do things that are different? Do you want to experience, that with every particular person in your life? But the thing is, at the moment with family, there's a lot of times where these things have, restricted the ability to love someone because of what we resent within our own self. And, it's a great time that we can liberate ourselves from for a small amount of discomfort. A small amount of discomfort that comes from getting on the phone and speaking to someone and being prepared to go through. And I suggest to you, for many of us, when we're prepared to go through someone's reaction and anger, when we try to mend something that is in our best interest, our ability to be at ease as they lose their proverbial shit, we've got to be able to sit with that and be present to that. And when we do, and that, the air goes out of the tires, we can then start to pump it back up in a very different way. And we can start to create a new relationship. But, as much as expression is essential, releasing is absolutely essential. And I would suggest, again, it goes hand in hand, and it's that ability to express ourselves authentically is all about how much we're able to release and let go of as well. I mean, this is, our biological function sends us great information that is tangible, that we can start to coordinate at an energetic, at an intangible, supposedly, level, because most of us are using these 5 physical senses to guide our life, which is a very low level of operation of the greatest technology that we have within us. What we truly are is an energetic being. But to be able to work with the unseen, we have to become very skilled at things that are inherent within us that we just don't choose to embrace. And we do to a certain level, and for sometimes we put it down as coincidences and alignments and points of interest, rather than actual navigation of our own self, our own truth. So our ability to release in our biological function, if we don't visit the bathroom once per day, we start to become blocked up. And there's not a pleasant way to describe this, except for, things start to happen where we find a great level of discomfort.
Yeah.
When we're doing and engaged in life, when we get up and go to the bathroom and release, we don't think about it, we don't question it, we don't ponder it afterwards. It is a process that we go through. And in the same way, for us to be able to process the toxicity that we are misunderstanding and maintaining in ourselves, we need to learn to be able to let go of that in a graceful way, simply and easily each day, not from a point of where most of us do this, from a point of remedy. The cycle of pain and relief. I've got pain, oh, now I feel relief. I'll wait till I got pain again and I'll relieve myself. And we continue to keep going through this death-defying circle.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of addictive behaviors become like, I know for myself at different points in time as well, Jason, like it's like wanting that sort of sense of relief or release in a dysfunctional way, which could be, seeking solace in alcohol or addictions or drugs or, any of those things.
You see, when we have anxieties, Paul, that we can't explain or no one else understands because they're so unique within us, it's a certain feeling, a certain sense that words don't bring. What we end up finding is we create physical problems, which manifest as maybe diseases or manifest as certain types of behavior that, puts a hand through a wall or pushes someone or creates a significant thing that's physical and tangible that's there that I now have to deal with because I can't deal with the unseen part of my own self. And our inability as a race of people to discredit, to dissolve all of the inherent wisdom of actually sitting in our own space, to go through processes. Not meditations are, they're supportive, but they're not going to change the way in which you operate your life. They're going to be supportive of what already exists. Meditation, I'm sure there's different terms of words for it, but ultimately a process that is definitive that we go through, that we are choosing. We allow ourselves to change the very fabric of what we are. So, for example, our capacity to be able to release, can be found in what we were mentioning before about expression each day.
Yeah.
A simple practice. I remember a friend of mine saying that he's, he had a 9-year-old daughter that was seeing a psychologist for some things that she was experiencing. And he was talking about at the start how it was a bit challenging to get her there, but how much she loved it. I mean, of course she does. You sit there and someone has actually engaged in listening to you to go through your own life. As much as someone is not interested in astrology, they'll listen at some point to what it is that they are and what they're about because it's an understanding of themselves. To engage and have someone actually as an audience to you substantiates your life. You have an audience. And that's for many of us. Eventually we get to such a point where we can sustain that within our own self. We can start to see people in the environment around us as additions to our life, not requirements of our life. They can start to become the benefits and the beauty that we experience because we're not needing or wanting something. I need this person to provide me that because then I can feel complete in my life, or they can provide me with security through income, or they can provide me with not feeling lonely when we go to events. There's this need that I have for a person, which is not actually me wanting to be with them. It's a requirement that I have of. And that's because we don't understand how to find that liberation within our own self. When we do that, those people around us simply become the beauty, the gratitude that we have, in living form, walking around in front of us. So this idea of releasing, the word itself, to release, to re-enter into a contract, to lease, to have something, a temporary ownership of, to release that is to be able to give space to what was in order to let go of, so that you can reclaim and re-enter a new relationship with the honor of what you've gone through, what changes you've experienced, and also what they have, and treat that person that you've known for years as a new person. Like, what is it you're experiencing, rather than just hearing the same old thing? Be genuinely interested. Relationships in life, there's not a right way to do them. There is your way of doing it. I hear this a lot from clients. So they go, well, I really would like this type of relationship, but I just can't find anyone who would want to be like that. And I said, well, have you actually noted down what relationship looks like for you? I mean, have you actually written it down and become clear on also what it is not? So it's not this particular type of experience. It's not living in this way. It's not going and doing these particular things together. It's actually this. This is the type of relationship you want, because until you can actualize it and understand it within yourself, no one else is going to understand it. And the thing is, once you understand what it looks like and what it's not, you can then start to identify it and be very clear and assertive in what it is that you're looking for. And if you're very clear on that, I'm sure you'll find other people that will find other people that will like you and may even recommend you and join you together. These are the things that, when we start to become clear and clarified in our own life, if we want that, if we believe that, what we find is very significant. And what we find is that things start to work in our favor because we are clear on what we want, rather than complaining about life in the way that I believe I have to have a relationship because that's the way it's expected of me. I need to live with, I need to honor, I need to provide, I need to do these particular things because that's what my parents did. That's what people around me are doing. And when I do something different, people don't like that.
It's funny, Jason, it just made me laugh before because talking about release and that sort of thing, there was a stage there that I'd go and see my psychologist, I think it was Chad, and like I used to joke with him about it that he'd get paid. Like I'd go and see him once a month just so he could listen to me to complain.
But I mean, it's true though.
God bless him. God bless Chad.
Yeah, but that's if you look at this whole point of expression is if we don't get rid of the stuff that's come to the surface to release the scum at the top of the water.
Yeah.
If we don't get an opportunity to release that, we never see the beauty that exists beneath it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, when we are releasing all of our toxicity, all the stuff that we are pissed off with, that we are angry about, that we're frustrated with, if we don't actually release that, that becomes our conversations.
Yeah.
And our relationships, all they are is the conversation we are currently having. My relationship with you beyond this is based upon this last conversation we've had. If I am, seeing you in a social environment or anyone else you're seeing, your partner that you're sleeping next to, your relationship is based upon the conversation you're currently having. Yeah. It's not based upon the amount of years you've been together. It's based upon the current conversation you're having. And that current conversation, if that is allowed to go into spaces that is trusting, that is vulnerable, and vulnerable just means you don't know what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
Vulnerable is not about being sad, not about exposing weaknesses or being emotional. Vulnerable is not knowing what is going to come from the opening in the middle of your face or the bottom of your face before you say it.
Well, what you're going to say next, or how it's going to be received either, Jason.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, they go hand in hand.
Slap.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of it. I mean, it's to be able to laugh in the face of your greatest tragedy. I mean, it is the dissolution of it. Comedy and tragedy go hand in hand because one is the antithesis of the other. If you're in tragedy, you laugh, tragedy will go. If you're laughing and you find tragedy, the laughing will go. These particular understandings and awarenesses provide a perfect solution to whatever it is we're experiencing if we want to change that. But that's of our own doing. So, like it's for each of us.
Absolutely. So it's been great, this episode so far, in actualizing independence in our relationships and the Christmas cheer coming up towards the end of the year. Anything else that you want to leave us with for anyone that's listening or watching as we close out towards the end of the year? And we're having a next episode coming up early in the new year.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give to ourselves is that ability to find time to express ourselves and do so independently, if not with someone else, ideally with someone else, because you'll amplify that opportunity. But being able to do that, and it's not that much different to going to the gym or exercising. That after that, we feel like doing something great. We feel like and we feel justified in eating the food that we really love to eat that we were saying before we shouldn't because we're feeling a little bit overdone. When we start to allow ourselves to express ourselves, we start to want to express more beauty. We start to want to engage in people. We want to expose them to more of what we are. But whilst we're holding resentment and we're not allowing ourselves to express, I think what we find is relationships that we don't want in our life because we become assumed to be this person that's opinionated and cantankerous rather than someone that sees the beauty and the joy in life that also has a deeper sage of wisdom on the other side. Yeah. So for me, find time with yourself to express yourself and release. Find that with another person. Find that within the bounds of a teaching. Find that in the bounds of a practice. There's something that we have on the quantum movement page that we put there for free for people, which is a thing called the simple approach or a simple approach. And it's just a simple writing practice. But to engage in that daily, that's those types of things. Find a way where you can express yourself. And I don't just mean through an artistic expression, but that can be a way. But allowing yourself to sit in your own audience, your own counsel, and allow yourself to let go of those things that have infected you, that you're becoming affected by, so that you can start to change the way that you want to affect the world around you. And that's a really important part. Find a way to express yourself openly, become an example for it, and over the Christmas break, say and speak your truth, but allow yourself to express the toxicity out beforehand somewhere else, and then allow what you want to say that you have repressed with others to be said in a place of peace, a place of ease, a place of certainty.
Beautiful. So on that note, I think we might close out on this episode anyway. Jason, thank you again for your time. Thank you for the people that are listening.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And again, thank you for those that are here engaged. And look, I wish you all, a great time. I think one of the best things for me between Christmas and New Year is that time when no one knows what day it is. And I love that, where people are just doing whatever. At the beach, some of us.
That's been half of the year for me. So that might be magnified coming up between Christmas and the New Year period. But absolutely. You're a beautiful man, Jason Reynolds. Thank you for your time. And we'll connect again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
Much love.
Great. Much love.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another message from the underground. Want to know more? Head over to Facebook and search for our private Facebook group, Messages from the Underground, or visit www.messagesfromtheunderground.org. To connect with Paul Seils, please visit paulseils.com. Stay human, protect the planet, raise the consciousness.